Just again say a big welcome everyone to City Hall for tonight's forum. We have a forum tonight on the Syrian refugee crisis, and I'll say this is not exclusive to Syria. There are refugees in dire need from other parts of the world as well, but certainly Syria and the Middle East is where the most acute need is right now, where we're seeing a serious crisis. We will hear a lot more about this tonight, but I welcome you and again acknowledge that we are on the Coast Salish First Nations traditional territory. This is unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and we are thankful to be here on their territory. Apologies for the challenges we have fitting everyone in. There's people upstairs as well who are on a video monitor, and appreciate you being here as well. We have a live stream on the website, on the city website, City of Vancouver, vancouver.ca. So there's people tuned in at home as well, and we've had lots of media that have been here today and covering this issue. So tonight we have a pretty simple agenda here. We'll just do a quick round of remarks. I'll just set some context here. As your mayor in the City of Vancouver, we have some great community partners who are going to share information tonight, and that will be from Immigrant Services Society of BC. That's Chris Friesen, who's sitting here to my left, and he's the Director of Settlement Services for ISS of BC. We also have from MOSAIC here, Eyob Naizghi, who is going to share his wisdom as well. So we'll have some updates from these two gentlemen who are experts in the field, and then we're going to open it up to questions and answers to the floor. We'll have the opportunity for people to ask questions and understanding not only what the local context is, what the issues are around sponsorship and getting more refugees here into Vancouver and across our country, but understanding obviously the provincial, the federal, and the international situation such as it is today. So we I want to acknowledge a number of elected officials who are here joining us tonight. And I'll just introduce a few folks who have come. We have from here at the city, City Council, Councillor Melissa DeGenova is here. Thank you for joining us. We have School Board Trustee Patty Backus is here, as well as from the Vancouver School Board, Superintendent Scott Robinson is here as well. We have our MP from Vancouver Quadra, Joyce Murray is here. I guess you're now a candidate again, so. There may be other candidates. I think we're just acknowledging those who have been elected in the last election. George Heyman is here, an MLA for Vancouver Fairview, and welcome to you. Who else do we have? A number of great organizations who've been doing good work here in the community, from Settlement Orientation Services, SOS, Vancouver Association for Survivors of Torture, Inland Refugee Society, Canadian Red Cross, Rainbow Refugees, the Mayor's Working Group on Immigration, a number of members of the team that works with me on the immigration front, Vancouver Coastal Health, thank you for coming, as well as Vancouver Foundation and Van City folks. We have lots of representatives from major organizations here in the city who have done a lot of work for refugees in Vancouver, and I want to thank you for that work, and thank you for making yourselves available to be here tonight, and to all of you who've made time to be here tonight, who care so much about this important challenge that we face right now in the limits that we have to refugees being able to come to Vancouver and have a new lease on life, coming from very challenging circumstances and unsafe places. So tonight we have 7 to 8:30 is what we had outlined for this meeting. I think we'll try and cap off at 8:30 the question and answer period, close off that. There'll be some time for people to network at that point, and we'll try and be finished at 9 o'clock here in the room, so city staff can clean up after us and take care of things. We do have obviously washrooms available here and throughout City Hall, and there are city staff on hand. Maybe if city staff around, if you want to wave your hand if anyone has questions about what to do here at City Hall, if you need any help or any support. That's who you can talk to as well. Participants have also been provided with a form to fill in if they wish to be contacted in the future. Totally optional, whatever you want to do. If you want more information on this topic, what we're dealing with tonight on the city's work on refugees or the community organizations that we're partnered with, that is an opportunity to have some follow-up on that. So I will just, with a few broader remarks about why we're here. This is all about information sharing to make sure that people have information and to help address the crisis that we're seeing around the world and doing our part here in Vancouver. It's really just an initial step to see what's possible. There is obviously a great deal to be done, but it's the more information that we have here in Vancouver, the better. And people can figure out where they can make a difference for refugees around the world and helping people come to Vancouver who need that support. So grateful that that there's this much interest. There's been a ton of calls and emails, people reaching out, asking City Hall, what can I do to help? I think many of you have come tonight because of that, and we're thankful for that. So hopefully we provide enough information for you to take those next steps and understand where you can make a difference. Obviously, there's a lot of cooperation and collaboration that's needed to tackle these challenges, and that comes, from all sectors across the board, whether it's individuals here in Vancouver, community as a whole, neighborhood groups, faith groups, governments have to play a very significant role in this. The private sector has an important role to play as well. So it is about partnerships and collaboration again, and I'm sure that will be stressed many times tonight. We are grateful to the partners in the community. As a city, we try to support refugee work as much as we can within our role as the city. It's really community organizations, and ISS and MOSAIC are two. I mentioned a number of others who do extraordinary work in the city to support refugees and to keep advancing the important policy that the city, the province, and the federal government need to have in place to support refugees and make sure they can make their way and succeed in this community. So a couple of initiatives I'll just mention that Vancouver has in progress right now. We have a big facility being built right now called Welcome House, which is going to provide about 136 beds of housing to refugees just off Victoria Drive on the east side. So a really important facility that was a long time in the makings is being built right now, which is going to be an important new service, a new facility for refugees in Vancouver that the City of Vancouver and many other partners have been part of. And I know we'll probably hear some more about that from Chris. We've been working, and Eyob and members of the Vancouver Immigration Partnership and the Mayor's Task Force on Immigration have been working on the Sanctuary City work. And this is to make sure that people can access city services without fear, that they can go to the library, can go and do things at City Hall, do things at community centers without fearing that they may end up back in their country of origin because of the law of the land. So we're working on the Sanctuary City. There are number of cities that are working on this around the world to make this this access without fear the new way forward, so that refugees feel safe in their new communities while they iron out the challenges that they've had processing all the paperwork and so on. So Sanctuary City is another piece of work that we've been doing. I think tonight is really about next steps and advancing this work. I have put a motion forward to Council to consider next week on Vancouver's advancing to a next step with immigration. We not only locally but calling on the federal government. We want to see the federal government committed to 20,000 refugees as a baseline per year and ramping up to that by 2020. Right now it's... Thank you. I hope the rest of Council feels the same way as all of you. I'm expecting to have good support from Council on this, but that's an advocacy call, and we don't do a lot of upfront advocacy through Council motions, but this one, given the circumstances right now, felt very important. And we've, judging from all of you here tonight and the interest that we've had, I think it's an important step to call on the federal government for getting back to more historical levels of bringing refugees to Canada to help build our country and play an important role in who we are as a country. So that's a next step. We also have work to do as a city, and that's calling on our city staff to really come back to us with next steps where we can up our game, where we can provide more support for refugees in our city with initiatives such as Sanctuary City and Welcome House. So that will be before council next week. So tonight, I think, is also an opportunity for people to give us some input on what our next step should be, what more we can do in Vancouver. We're all ears on that front, so would appreciate that. But it's also about being open to a lot of the information right now. And so I'm going to turn it over without further ado to Chris Friesen. I'll give you a quick bio on Chris. He's been working in the areas of refugee and immigrant settlement, both here in Canada and abroad, for close to 30 years. He is a frequent speaker, media spokesperson, and research collaborator on these issues, both in Canada and abroad. And for over 20 years, Mr. Friesen has been the Director of Settlement Services for Immigrant Settlement Services of BC, which is one of Canada's largest multicultural immigrant serving agencies. So he's been doing all kinds of important work locally, nationally, internationally. We appreciate that greatly, and really appreciate you having the time to give us your wisdom on this subject.
Thank you.
Welcome, Chris Friesen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor. I also want to just thank the city for organizing this event so quickly over the long weekend. It is important, and I'm so pleased that the city has taken such decisive leadership in this regard. I want to start off with a positive image, because we have been inundated by negative images in most recent time. My positive image was looking at the arrival of refugees into Germany and how they were getting off that train to crowds of Germans clapping, providing candies to the children. It was a phenomenal reception, and that is what we need in this country. I want to unpack the Syrian refugee crisis within the larger context of Canada's humanitarian program. I want you to leave tonight with some facts, and the information and the statistics that I'm going to share with you are from the Government of Canada. First off, very basic, there are two main categories of refugees that come to Canada. There are those that are refugee claimants that seek asylum in our country, and there are those that come from abroad, both as government-assisted refugees or private-sponsored refugees. In recent years, the refugee claimants have seen a significant decline. In fact, 70% decline in refugee claimants between the years 2007 and 2012. The global context for refugee resettlement is phenomenal. You will have no doubt heard the High Commissioner state in June, there are currently 60 million refugees and internally displaced people. The UNHCR has requested in 2016 1.15 million resettlement spaces, calling on states around the world. To give you a sense of the states' response, in 2014, 28 countries resettled refugees from abroad. Total combined, 74,000 individuals out of a request of 1.15 million next year. Canada's currently private sponsorship. These are refugees that are sponsored by a variety of individuals, faith communities. Canada's target for this type of refugee coming from abroad is 4,500 to 6,500 annually. But in the case of Syrians, there is no cap. Canada's current government-assisted refugees, these are refugees that the government brings in and supports for 1 year. The target is 5,800 to 6,500 individuals annually. This year, 2015, we're looking at probably reaching around 6,900 individuals. Another important fact that you should be aware of as Canadians, the Government of Canada for now close over 2 decades has issued a transportation loan for government-assisted refugees. You may not realize this, but government-assisted refugees, those refugees that are identified abroad and supported and invited by the government to come to this country, are given an interest-bearing loan for a one-way flight to Canada, as well as the coverage of their medical examinations abroad. Canada remains the only country in the world that provides an interest-bearing transportation loan. This loan can mean families acquiring up to $10,000 of debt upon arrival in this country. For those families that have children that are 18 years of age and older, they may also acquire a transportation loan. This is $15 million annually is the transportation loan. If Canada chose to eliminate this loan, it would be $33 million for all outstanding loans. But get this, 91% of the loans are repaid. 91%, according to the government's statistics, are repaid by these individuals, which they have to start paying those loans within 6 months of arrival in our country. Syria, very quickly, to unpack what is happening here. The UN High Commissioner in February 2014 called on the global community to resettle 100,000 Syrian refugees over a 2-year period, 2015 and 2016. Canada's response was 10,000 over 3 years. What was different in this appeal was the fact that the government of Canada chose to encourage the faith community to take the majority of that special request from the UN. This request by the UN was over and above Canada's commitments. However, in the government's response, Syrian government-assisted refugees were actually integrated as part of Canada's current target of 6,500, plus or minus. What this meant was that those refugees in other parts of the world were left behind because of this decision, and have to wait longer. And just to put this into context, the UNHCR High Commissioner has stated in numerous times that the largest number of need for resettlement is actually from the continent of Africa, not the Middle East. How many Syrians have come to British Columbia as government-assisted refugees? In the past 32 months, ending August 31st, 2015, there's been a total of 72 individuals. Currently, as every government-assisted refugee comes through our organization, Welcome House, Immigrant Services Society of British Columbia, we have seen 405 government-assisted refugees, or approximately 50% of the provincial target, which is 800 individuals a year. Mayor, could you hold this for a second? Sure. So I want to show you, in March of 2002, after the Kosovo refugee emergency or resettlement movement in 1999, Canada developed a refugee contingency plan. In this plan, I want to quote 2 sentences. This is the definition of a refugee emergency. Any situation in which the life or well-being of refugees will be threatened unless immediate and appropriate action is taken, and which demands an extraordinary response and exceptional measures. This is the definition. And we have been suggesting that this plan actually be enacted in this country in response to the Syrian crisis. That's all my words for the moment.
All right, thank you, Chris. Thank you for that that global context and how it meets our local circumstance. Appreciate that, and we'll have an opportunity to ask Chris questions after we hear from Eyob Naizghi. And Eyob, in his early 20s, became stateless as a refugee from Eritrea. And this experience led to over 30 years of commitment to social justice for immigrants and refugees. In 1985, he earned a master's degree in geography from UBC, specializing in rural-urban migration. And before joining MOSAIC in 1993, Eyob managed development projects with refugees. And he also worked as a freelance consultant, designing, developing, evaluating, and monitoring projects with refugees and internally displaced people. So he's been serving for many years as Director of Settlement Services Department, appointed Executive Director of MOSAIC in December of 2000, and in this position is obviously responsible for leadership of a great organization here in MOSAIC, and we are very appreciative of Eyob being here to help share more information and then be available for questions. Please welcome Eyob Naizghi.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, okay. It's okay. I could stand. Thank you very much, Mayor. And I also want to join Chris Friesen for recognizing and acknowledging the City of Vancouver's leadership on this crisis. This is not, as the Mayor as well as Chris said, this is not a Syrian crisis. We should actually call this a refugee crisis. With that note, I think, the Syrian crisis has brought the attention of the world to our rooms. Chris has spoken very eloquently, and I can't repeat what he has said on the numbers, on the facts that we have presently. I want to touch base, approach it from a human content, what it means, and I want to relate it to the day-to-day work that we do, all of us do as frontline workers, leading organizations, and what have you. I think the image of that Syrian boy, Alan Kurdi, did bring to us our humanity. It helped us to regain our humanity. I think it inspired so many people, and that's why we are all here today. It's that inspiration, it's that move that you have to do something and you want to be engaged, and that I should acknowledge you, I should recognize you, and I should honor you for that. We have seen the images of refugees crossing the Mediterranean to Italy, Turkey. And we've seen the refugees crossing borders. And we have seen countries respond. As Chris mentioned, some are opening doors, like Germany. Some are closing their doors. So we have to be aware of that. I think if we are not engaged in this process at this point in time, history will judge us. Having said that, as I indicated earlier on, yes, there's 4.1 to 5 million Syrian refugees and displaced people. However, there are 60 million we should not forget. That's 90% of the population or more. There are, as Chris mentioned, the majority of them are in Africa, and the majority of them are actually attempting to cross some borders, either the ocean border or the land border. And I mean, the issue of smugglers is an opportunistic move, and we have to recognize that. But paying attention to the issue of smugglers is not going to take us anywhere towards the solution we want to adapt. Let me share my personal experience, I guess, as a refugee, and bring it back to what changed in the last 40 years since I became a refugee. Yes, I did cross a border. Yes, I did walk for 3 weeks with 14 other people whom I didn't know, whom we met on the road. Yes, we did not have food for days. We did not have water for days. But we had that move to escape. We have that desire to escape. We have to rescue our lives. Yes, I did live in refugee camp outside the city of Kassala in Sudan for a period of 2 months. And that is what motivated me actually to be a leader. I spoke English in my early years. I have to represent the people in front of UNHCR and in front of the government of Sudan. It was that those experiences that gave me actually the initial motivation to be grounded on social justice issues, as Mayor Grosser told you earlier on. There was a lot of dependence on UNHCR and UNHCR camps. There was very little awareness of what is available outside the camps, unless otherwise you have a person outside the camp who could lead you. I came to Canada as a student sponsored by World University Canada. So the group sponsorship could be fully part of that, and I'm grateful to that. What changed in the last 40 years is, I think, the refugee crisis geographically expanded to all 4 corners of the world. Social media came to be, the internet came to be, which increased the accessibility of information and the sharing of information to help people through their movements, through their travels. I think that's, it was very interesting how LinkedIn has become a source of communication for the Syrian refugees as they were traveling from country to country to country with their relatives, with their friends, with organizations. I get calls from Israel of people I don't know. I get calls from a lot of Middle Eastern countries for help, which I can't help. So that has increased, I guess, significantly with the world being closer together, coming closer together. And I guess, it has increased, I guess, accessibility. So Europe cannot wait for refugees to come out from the camps. The refugees are going to be on the shores of Europe. I think had we been created, had it not been for this tightrope security that we have at the borders, yes, they will be flowing to us too. We would have seen that flood coming. I think it's very important, that we do not confuse the experience of immigrants and refugees. What is the experience of a refugee? I'm not trying to educate you, but I think I have to put that in a context in that refugees do not make decisions or plan their trips. Refugees are forced. They are forced to move. They move with very little resources. They move with very little information. And they move sometimes with very little preparation. I could tell you when I decided to move, there was nothing on my back. I just have to escape. Then on through that movement, you can imagine the amount of isolation. You can imagine the buildup of trauma as a result of that experience. Even for us, looking at that image of that child, looking at that rickety boats crossing the Indian and and the different seas. It's very traumatic. In fact, I told a reporter that I have stopped watching TV because it's desensitizing me, and a lot of our public in the north are desensitized. One thing that I should mention about a refugee being different from an immigrant is the resiliency. And Chris earlier on mentioned about the smile of people arriving on the shores of Europe. You know, the resiliency is seen, and I think we have ample refugees in this room to demonstrate how resilient we refugees are. I think the refugees. I should also mention that over the past years, Canada has tremendous experience of compassion to refugees. I don't need to repeat the Vietnamese people, which all of you have been around to witness. I was not lucky, but I do work with both people, and they tell me the stories. And Canada and Canadians were very compassionate at that time. We were also compassionate with the cause of our refugees as recently as 2000, 2001 era. And those are very important milestones. In numbers, they may not be huge, but we stepped up to the plate when action was required. I think those are very important things to celebrate and recognize. And I think, that leads us to today. What do we have on the ground that's different than when the boat people arrived? MOSAIC and ISS were in their infantile stage. We're just growing. Now we have very matured, experienced organizations ready to support immigrants and refugees, but more so with great experience with refugee resettlement. I think, we can equally say, despite our, we may complain how small, how little, how diverse, how non-diverse, but we have established government funding, including municipalities. The city of Vancouver, for example, is an exemplary organization to mention. We are very well connected to the refugee communities. They reach us, we reach them. I think we also have a large group of sponsors, whether it is the church groups, whether it is the ethno-specific community groups, or whether it is other groups. We have very founded and coordinated sponsors. We have very motivated groups of individuals who would want to sponsor groups. So we have a lot of readiness within Canada and within BC to be able to act and support, whether it be Syrian refugees or Eritrean refugees or Ethiopian refugees or any other African refugees that we have, or Afghan refugees for that matter. What is not working now? I think, Chris has touched in number forms, but let me put it in human terms for you. In human terms, what we don't have on the ground is the political willingness. Mayor Robertson graciously talked about what motion he wants to push for the federal government to adapt. 20,000 compared to 60 million people is a drop in the ocean. We have to remember that. Compared to what Germany is doing, it's a drop in the ocean. And I think, that's a good start for us to ask. So we have to ask for political willingness from our leaders. The other big issue we have is the process itself. if all of you were going to form a group today or join a church group that has a sponsorship agreement, and you were willing to sponsor a lot of people, the pipeline is blocked. We need to streamline our processes. I'm sorry, I'm giving you my back. Sorry. You know, we need to change our applications process time. You know, it's taking way too long. I could tell you stories where family reunification takes about 5 to 7 years. To bring my family, to bring my kids, my children, that's how long it takes at sometimes. And this is not acceptable. We have the know-how, we have the expertise to support people, and I think we should bring them now. I think, you know, I think, you know, Chris would share this with me. We're quite, at the ground level, we're quite inspired by the number of calls for action we have. For example, the mayors of the different cities, including Mayor Robertson, are calling for action. And that's very inspiring for us at the ground level. The Premier of BC, I guess, made a statement this morning with 1 million support to this initiative. Although, you know, they have called it the Syrian resettlement, I believe. But it's a good start. I think, you know, that should inspire all of us as citizens, as people who are concerned with this issue. Chris has already spoken to the contingency plan. I think that needs to be in place. MOSAIC is encouraged by the individuals and groups, including employers, who are actually contacting us and asking, how could we help? So this is very encouraging for us. I think, you know, I don't know how the mayor would consider this, but one of the things that I and Chris spoke about is this is not going to be over tomorrow, day after tomorrow. The refugee issue is going to be last. And I think, you know, we need some kind of a coordination body for the whole Lower Mainland. You know, the mayor has spoken to media on his interest to work with the other municipalities, with the other mayors to push this agenda, and that's very encouraging. And I think, you know, thank you for listening to me, and I hope to hear more from the audience in terms of what we need to do and how we could move this forward. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Eyob. I really appreciate you sharing the human side, the realities that refugees face, going back to your own story. Thank you for sharing that, and for all your courage, translating your lived experience into leadership and making a difference for so many refugees around the world and here in Vancouver. So I'm going to actually go back to Chris for some quick points on what people in Vancouver can do to make a difference.
I think many of you would have received a handout as you were coming in, I believe. Three immediate things that you can do as residents here of Vancouver. The biggest and most immediate impact is donating. Donating to one of many international organizations that are working on the ground in the field in the Middle East. That will have the biggest and the most immediate impact. With the crisis and the increased numbers and heading into the winter, the UN is being stretched for tents, medical supplies, food, clothing, and this would make a significant difference. And be creative in your fundraising activities. If you're having a block party at the end of the summer, turn it into a fundraiser. If your child is having a birthday party this fall, consider the children, friends bringing gifts, or bringing donations rather than a gift. take on a book club and read something fiction to do with refugees and pass the hat around. Be creative. The other one is we have a number of local refugee serving agencies. The mayor has referred to some of those. Volunteer, make a donation locally, and that would be gracefully received. The last thing, there has been such intense interest around refugee sponsorship. We have to be mindful of this. This is a complex process involving significant responsibility, costs, processing time, etc. Think about perhaps fundraising for or volunteering for a pre-existing and more experienced sponsorship agreement holder, and there's a few on that handout, rather than jumping right into directly getting into refugee sponsorship. We have received significant numbers of individuals over the year who are very traumatized, requiring specialized resources and treatments that are not available outside of the Lower Mainland. So this has to be considered. And I'm going to leave it to you, and I look forward to some questions and comments from those attending tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chris, for that. So we are at opening up the floor for questions. Do we have, so we have a mic up here so people can step up and line up behind the podium here where there is a mic. And is there a mic at the back as well? Okay, there's one over on this side for folks on this side of the room. So we've got one on each side. And there may be written questions. If you want to submit a written question to city staff, if you don't feel like jumping up to the podium, we can do that too. Just wave, if city staff can keep an eye on folks and wave your piece of paper in the air if you have a question, and we will get to that. So we'll start here. If you could just introduce yourself quickly and your question.
Hello, can everybody hear me? I would like to thank the City of Vancouver for hosting this event. My name is Riyam El-Safadi. I'm a medical aid volunteer. I have been sending medical aid and visiting Syria 5 times for the past 3 years to help the suffering people there, and it's only a drop in the bucket. I have 2 points, but first thing I would like to thank the Vancouver Coastal Health for the past 3 years. They've been helping us, donating medical supply that's no longer standard of North America, and the 9th medical aid container just arrived in Syria. So thank you very much from the people of Syria. Without further ado, I would like to voice from the people in Syria and some of the suffering refugees and the people inside. If you allow me 60 seconds only. First one is just a correction. The number of refugees is exceeding 4 million. The number of internally displaced, those are homeless, they lost their home, is 7.6 million. So that means the refugee outside is 27%, everybody inside is about 72%. So not to forget, strike a balance between the refugee we will be welcoming soon and those who are still suffering under Assad regime and the bombardment. It takes only taking one person out, Assad, outside Syria, go take him to the best island in the world, and you resolve all this crisis, refugee going on. Seriously, I'm not joking. The second thing is, what you see on the shores of Europe right now is only represent 2% of all the refugees happening right now. So no matter what we do, it's still going to be a drop in the ocean, as the gentleman here mentioned. So what I would like to remind you that in the month of August alone, 240 kids were killed inside Syria, and there is not a single media that covered that. So there's some kind of differences when you see something that impacting the tranquility of Europe or off the shores versus what's really going on inside Syria, and we haven't seen any help inside. I've been inside, I've seen the battle bomb, I've seen people killed in front of me. So I'm talking from an eyewitness who's trying to voice it, with all due respect. So we talked about the root cause, we talked about how many kids. The next one, the 3 top things that I can see, and what I'm hearing, connecting on a daily basis with medical staff who are risking their life inside Syria, is number 1, no-fly zone or stop the barrel bomb. We could do this instead of just bombing there. We could have an area where it can stop the flow of 12,000 refugees going. Yes, we're going to take 20, 30, 60, but we're not going to be, all those is like 2, 3, 5% of the total 4 million. So there's a limit how much we can do and how much with this money we can stretch to there. second thing is the failing policy of the current government about refugees. It's not allowing the treatment, similar treatment to the earthquake of Haiti or the recent, the Philippines, where they managed to have a reunion, family reunion. There's a lot of people who have a brother or sister terrified for 4 years now, trying to lobby the government, just for God's sake, let me bring my brother or sister. Similar to the little angel that we saw their picture and everybody felt heartbroken. We could have brought those. So I would encourage at least, Mayor, to take this to the federal government.
Okay, I guess you get a wrap up. Okay.
Quickly, the last 10 seconds. The last point, I've been helping a family here in Vancouver, in BC now we have 11 Syrian family. One of them has a cancer, their child has a cancer. And thank you for Children's Hospital for treating them. Just, I'm not trying to finger point at anyone. If you could think about, they could not manage to find a simple house next to the Children's Hospital. So when we have those big waves, what's the city could plan and do to encourage, first thing, not being racist against newcomers and not allowing some of the landlords, not allowing housing. Thank you very much
Okay,
for allowing me.
thank you. Thank you. And I understand this mic is not transmitting for our live feed. So if I could ask folks over here to, we all have to come over to this mic and integrate into society on this side as best you can. If you can alternate with the lineup. And we'll go to this side here. If you have a question for Chris or Eyob. Okay, welcome.
Hi, my name is Melanie Susan Steparik. S is in Sam, T is in Tom, U, P is in Peter, ARYK. And I worked for Greenpeace, Children of Chernobyl. They died of leukocytosis and leukemia. Mass death. I'm a certified medical lab assistant. I flew over my first European trip with 15 bucks in my pocket during the Gulf War. Life is very complicated. But I made it in and out of Moscow. Mokba. And there are great, great, great issues among us. And if Canada can help, send food. However, there are gangs that run amok this city. Big time. I know because I've been running from the Hells Angels for 25 years. And they run the docks. I also worked for Lloyd's of London, Roger Haggard and Brian Gilty, Marine Cargo Surveyors. I used to record every ship that came in and out of cargo, in and out of Vancouver.
Do you have a question for folks who are here? This is what we're doing. Gathering to talk about this. Thank you for coming tonight. Next speaker, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Cedric Chen, and here are my questions. I'll try to keep them short. So, first of all, how much would the city council and the city government be relying on the private sectors and non-governmental organizations in terms of providing accommodations and utilities and other necessities like language courses and psychological counselings to the coming refugees? And secondly, does the Vancouver School Board have any power or any say when it comes to recognizing overseas credentials that come with these refugees? And last but not least, how will the City Council attempt to resolve potential conflicts between refugees and unions representing local workers, and potential conflicts between refugees and local citizens and possibly First Nations? At this point, I'm not trying to judge what is right and what is wrong. I'm just trying to find out what plans the city have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your questions. Chris, do you want to start?
In fact, the City of Vancouver has been one of the most outstanding municipalities across the country in providing direct community services grants to refugee-serving agencies here in the city. In fact, in our new facility that's being built at 2610 Victoria Drive, the city has been the largest supporter, with contributions of both in land and donation cash of $4.1 million. The city is doing, frankly, an outstanding job in welcoming and building more inclusive communities and leading the way across the country, as far as I'm concerned. The issue that you raised about potential tension between
And I want to see a flyover.
between the unions and refugees and so forth. In the 40 years that I've been in, that our agency has worked or has had the privilege of working with resettled refugees, we've never had that issue. Up to now, it has not been an issue.
I'm raising this question because
Yes.
this morning I heard the news that the union representing Canadian seamen, seafarers, like mariners, are complaining that foreign ships sailing between Canadian ports are hiring too many foreign workers. That's why I came up with this question.
Thank you. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think, from the community organizations' point of view and the unions, we have very good working relationship with the union leadership, I should say. And we haven't had any major issues. Whenever there is an issue or conflict in the workplace, union leadership has actually asked for intervention on diversity and a number of other communications. So it is, it's a good question you're asking. I'm not trying to minimize it. I think there is fear, usually from workers, or they may be taking jobs. That's obvious. We hear the same thing about immigrants in general, but we also know eventually they do work together.
Thanks, Eyob. So we'll go to thank you for your question, Cedric. Next questions.
Thank you. My name is Byron. I'm a member of Sanctuary Health, a group of activists who have been working for a few years now after the cuts to the refugee care from the federal government. And thank you, Mayor, for bringing us together today. And you are saving us some time and some rallies. We were 800 people in a rally on Saturday demanding the city to have an answer for this crisis. Thank you very much for putting this framework today of Sanctuary City and moving forward. I'm so happy also to be a part of this meeting today. Sanctuary Health, we are ready to move forward. We are ready, and we would like to know if there is a plan to have working groups. My suggestion is that we should go back home today with an idea of what to do, having working groups where we have settlement agencies, but we also have unions. We should include unions. We should include grassroots organizations and have a plan together. It's the only way that we can move forward this. And in the memory of Alan, we should move forward. Alan should be here with us today, and his spirit is here. And we should move forward also with working together. I am making the call also to the settlement organizations to please endorse the Sanctuary City principles, because you should provide services to people regardless of their immigration status. That's a problem right now. I'm asking you to please sign those endorsements and help us to build a welcoming city, a sanctuary city. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very good points. Next speaker.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Mayor Gregor Robertson, the Executive Director of MOSAIC and the ISS. Thank you so much to bring us here together in this dialogue. It's very, very important, especially myself as a refugee. My name is Yasin Chirega Misago. I come from Burundi, and I come from those families of called Burundian refugees in 1972. They are stateless because the government of Burundi can't provide them, and nobody can accept them because living outside for a long time. And Canada and the United States took that initiative to take them out. The remaining group is in Tanzania and Malawi. I came to Canada through the World University Service of Canada, same group, the executive director, MOSAIC. USCA, those who doesn't know that organization, just a little history. After the First World War, the League of Nations countries decided that they should bring refugees. And after the defeat of Germany, all those countries, they decided, including Japan and the United States, to withdraw from supporting refugees. And Canada, of course, could not manage to sponsor those refugees. Students, what Canada decided to do is to mobilize universities everywhere in Canada, students to contribute $1. And that is the money that brought Mr. Eyob, brought me here, and every year we come here in Canada about 60 to 100 students, different universities. But USCA is not something that exams that most people here they see students they do. Myself, I did 2 degrees at UBC, and it took me just almost less than 4 years. It was just because of the hard working and the type of exams we do to come through to Canada. Out of 500 students, USCA needs at least 10 students in the one refugee camp. And you have to write the most advanced examination is almost 10 times to prove that you're a product of University of British Columbia or McGill University. But the education system refugees go through something that is really very terrible. I have this book here. I work with the United for Human Rights and Youth for Human Rights. And this book is called the United Nations Declarations for Human Rights. 1948 countries, all of them decided that there should be what you call the refugees resettlement, what they describe as the Convention of Refugees. And each country had to sign for that agreement, but Canada didn't sign these declarations until after 1969, when the First Nations compelled the government to sign for that document. And then Canada became a multicultural country when the Prime Minister Trudeau decided that, yes, let us, all of us, welcome all communities. But the problem which is happening here today is because the current regime, I'm a political scientist, and I have to let everybody know that the current regime which is here today, the conservative government, the federal government, has violated what we call Canada's reputation as the best country to resettle refugees. Because when you go to refugee camp, Canada, it takes you right now, if the way you see Alan Kudi, it takes you, if you apply resettlement and you get a chance to come to Canada, it's gonna take you a process 3 to 7 years to come here. And this boy you saw in refugee claimants, we call it, he was under unification. So his family was trying to bring him here, but the process takes a longer time, and then the documents were rejected, so they had to find the means. Alan died the way you saw, and that's how, to me, it is not a surprise, because Ethiopians, I was in Malawi when I saw Ethiopians, 45 of them drawn in Lake Malawi, and I saw Eritreans, I saw Ethiopians. Myself, those who have been hearing me here in the city, I've organized a lot of different rallies that brought different people to respond to Mayor's campaign, supporting the community, mental addiction issues, and most of these people are refugees, people who have traumatized. That's why I really appreciate that. But my question that I want to end with it is that, sorry.
Okay, we're going to have to move on. We've got a long line of people with questions.
Sorry, Mayor, it takes a long time. What can we do if, in this situation, MOSAIC and ISS in the government You have heard that the city Mayor Robert is calling it quick intervention, but this process takes more than, as I've already said, what is the mechanisms, the strategies that you already have laid down for quick intervention. Thank you so much.
Want to speak to quick interventions?
I think that's what we are here for.
Yeah, I think what we're here for is talking about the most rapid ways that we can make a difference right now. Chris outlined ways that people can give, and the handout illuminates that as well. And also about making contacts, so people know who's who, and here in Vancouver about taking those next steps more urgently. So thank you for your points. And we have, we're at 8:07 now. We've got a long line of people. So I'll just ask everyone to be brief. If you have a question or a comment, try and keep it under a minute. I'll remind you of that, and we can have quick responses. I've got a few written ones that are coming from the crowd as well, and people upstairs. Next speaker, welcome.
Ampasadani, father of Sablefish, Raven Tribe, Ganhada, expressing appreciation for the respectful acknowledgement of these ancestral lands. I shall attempt to ask a relevant question. One, absent a lengthy preamble. I believe that the second presenter toward the end of his remarks referenced the concept of intermunicipal collaboration. My question primarily to the mayor, inviting responses from both of the presenters. Does the mayor feel that there could be a role for Metro Vancouver and perhaps other regional districts?
Thank you for your question. Certainly, I think that's a very good point, and one that, as one of the directors at Metro Vancouver's board of directors and Vice Chair Raymond Louie, who is a councillor here in Vancouver, we've got the ability to bring that forward to Metro to make sure that we're coordinating our action. And I know organizations that are here tonight do a lot of work at Metro as a region. That's basically certainly not specific to Vancouver, City of Vancouver, but these organizations work right across Metro and the province. So we'll look at a role, constructive role that Metro can play. And thank you for bringing that forward. Our next speaker.
Hi, my name is Eyob, and I have a question for the mayor and also the settlement services. The question is, I'm pleasing, I feel really grateful to see your leadership in your proposal of 20,000 refugees. However, by knowing that there are 12 million displaced people in Syria and this is only a drop in the ocean, I wonder how many people will be Syrian refugees in this 20,000? This is one question. And the other question is, I'm from Turkey and I work with so many refugees from Middle East and Africa, and I know in many countries, especially in Turkey, there's a residency fee for refugees. So even though the government is providing these loans for refugees to come here, one-way ticket, grateful again for that, but this is not enough for refugees to come here because refugees are in debt in those hosting countries, so they cannot move to another country without paying their debt. So I wonder, as a settlement services, if you have any strategy to lobby to the government, call the government to meet with these expenses of refugees, not only the ticket, because without paying the debt, they cannot come here technically, as a settlement service, do you have any plan if the government doesn't pay that? Are you planning to meet with this expense, or if there's any way? And the other thing is just a comment. This is so great to see your immediate action in bringing us together and creating this space for us to discuss what we can do as citizens and residents. And also, many people mention about sanctuary city, and I want to mention it again because even though I'm appreciating your comment about the city will be discussing this next week, I'm also concerned about how long it will take to discuss, table, maybe further discuss this, and how when the decision will come through. For that reason, I call the city to also take an immediate action to become a sanctuary city, not take longer as you expect us to take the action immediately. And the last thing that I just want to say about the call for people, I love international organizations and their effort on the ground, but I also acknowledge there are so many organizations on the ground. Without them, the system is broken, and without them, refugees cannot access legal aid because international organizations are supporting food, security, housing, those type of support, but without legal aid, they cannot deal with the violence they are experiencing from the government in those refugee camps, or they cannot apply refugee status because they don't know the application. UNHCR doesn't respond to them. Those are the technical problems because there are not enough people. So I ask everyone in this room also consider making donation to the organizations on the ground in Syria, in Turkey, in Jordan, in Egypt, because those are the countries who actually right now accepted an enormous number of refugees, even though they don't treat them as they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very quickly, response. The suggestions of how Vancouverites can get involved and do something is just, it's not an exhaustive list by any means. It's a starting point to generate interest and discussion. Your comments around the transportation loan, just to be clear, this is the Government of Canada's current policy that each government-assisted refugee family may acquire a debt of up to a loan, an interest-bearing loan of up to $10,000. So this now with this piece of information, you know, I would suggest that you raise it with the government during this election. Is that the country that we want? Is this a fair and humane policy?
Thanks, Chris. And just a quick answer on the city's actions. We are in the process of becoming a sanctuary city. I think there's strong commitment on council, and we are in the action steps of that, implementing that with the Vancouver Immigration Partnership and the Mayor's Immigration Task Force. So that is advancing ambitiously. I'm just going to pose a question here. There's a set of questions that have come from the room here and upstairs around group sponsorship. Can someone, first of all, is it a mandatory requirement of that a refugee being sponsored privately must be a designated refugee as determined by the UNHCR? And if yes, how can that process be sped up? Can someone give an overview of the Group of Five process and how successful it has been? Another group sponsorship process. What are the financial obligations associated with private sponsorship? Maybe just some clarification around group sponsorship, private sponsorship.
Yeah. So on if you undertake to sponsor a refugee, and for the sake of argument, this family maybe has 4 or 5 members, you have to raise upwards of $25,000 to $30,000. You are responsible completely for their well-being during their first year in Canada. You have to search out housing in this city for them. You have to assist them to socially and economically sort of integrate and provide support to them. So it is a it is a serious responsibility. And that's why we've suggested that the focus of this humanitarian crisis should be the Government of Canada's responsibility, and not solely on the backs of the faith community and private sponsors and groups of 5. And as Eyob has pointed out, the processing time is considerably longer than it should be. I remember during Kosovar, the process was expedited significantly. And another point that I forgot to make there too, when Canada agreed to accept 5,000 Kosovar refugees within a 4-month period, military bases were opened up in Atlantic Canada and Ontario to quickly expedite their relocation to this country. And they were given a security clearance overseas, so there was no risk of potential unfavorable refugees coming into this country. The contingency plan allowed for significant resources of all federal departments to ensure that the process was followed correctly, but it was a quick response.
Thanks, Chris. We have a huge lineup of people, and I'm just being conscious of time here. It's 8:15, so I don't think we're going to get to everyone in the list of speakers here, but we'll do if everyone's quick with their questions, that's great. We are collecting frequently asked questions as well. So if people are in the line, if you don't get your question asked, we can actually get your questions from our staff can collect questions, and we can put them on the city website ASAP with answers to those questions. So we'll go to the next speaker.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Victor Porter. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Eyob, for all your work. Chris, you gave us an overview of the statistics and numerical factors. Eyob, you gave us an overview of the humanitarian perspective of this issue. There's something that's missing, and it's the policy analysis. People here and outside this room want to sponsor refugees and so on. The main obstacle is the federal government. We had 10 years of consistent and incremental undermining of an erosion of Canada's commitment to refugee protection. So unless we undo that lack of willingness to support refugees, we won't get anywhere. I'll get to my question, Mayor, soon. Many people mention processing times and how we make a group of 5 to sponsor refugees and so on, and that's great. That's how Canadians are. That's how we are. But we can ask for emergency measures. For instance, we can ask the federal government to allow every Syrian and every Iraqi family to bring their relatives, and we'll process them here once they are safe. So, and these are just a few ideas. My question is that I ask and I beg you that your motion to council had a bit more punch. This is the time to take risks and to tell the things as they are. So please, just spice it up a bit. And you have lots of advisors there. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. We'll keep that in mind in the council debate of looking for amendments. So, our next speaker.
Hey, everybody. So, thank you, first off, for setting this up. I don't have a question. I know this is a totally unheard of part of question periods. Like Eyob, I'm from Eritrea, and I think people are generally unaware that Eritreans are the second largest group of people crossing the Mediterranean right now. Pretty much every single Eritrean that exists in the diaspora, that is around in this city, knows someone directly or has someone in their family who is drowned in the Mediterranean the last few years. This is a serious issue. People are fleeing Eritrea in droves, and they're doing so for a number of different reasons. There's a long history. There are a lot of internal dynamics, but there are also things that are rooted in this city. One thing that we haven't really discussed, I really do appreciate the discussion of what we can do from now on, right? We can develop a sanctuary city, which is great. But that speaks to what we can do to stand with the current refugees. There's also a lot we can do to prevent refugees prevent people from becoming refugees in the first place. The fact is, Vancouver is a mining capital. You know, we have one of the lowest corporate tax rates in the world, and there is a mining company called Nevson Resources, based right here, based downtown. It has a mining site in Eritrea, in the Bisha region, and it's displacing a lot of people in the Bisha region. That's number one. So people are leaving, people are going to Sudanese refugee camps. From there, they're often going to cross the Mediterranean or go into Israel. Nefsin Resources has also been accused, I think with a lot of justification and a lot of evidence, of using slave labor. And that slave labor is in the form of military conscripts, indefinite military conscripts. Young people, 17, 18, they finish high school, and they go, they're drafted into the military indefinitely. Sometimes they're there for decades. And rather than fighting in any wars, because there are no wars right now, they are put into various social projects. And Nefsin Resources has employed these military conscripts. So my point is, a lot of the people fleeing Eritrea are fleeing because of the issue of indefinite military conscription, which is caused and used and exploited by a Vancouver company. We have to recognize that. We can talk all we want about sanctuary cities and what we're going to do to help people, but we should also recognize our complicity in this growing crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And our next speaker, welcome.
Hello, my name is Lois Boxall. I'm a professional engineer here in Vancouver, also a priest in the Diocese of New Westminster. But I'm here to ask questions about, or a question, two questions. The first has to do with private sponsorship groups, because I'm an immigrant to Canada, now a naturalized Canadian, and I figure, and also a naturalized citizen in the United States, and paperwork, it's about the paperwork. The reason why I'm asking about Group of Five sponsorship particularly has to do with the fact that, just as an indication, so you know the sort of energy that's here in Vancouver. I came back from Edmonton on Thursday afternoon. The first thing I did was check Christchurch Cathedral, which is the church I'm at. I checked their website and I saw no response, and I launched a Facebook page, basically, of my friends and said, we need to do something. I'm committing $5,000 of my money. Here we are 5 days later. We've got $14,000 in secured pledges, a lawyer, 2 accountants, 38 people basically saying, and actually for our Group of Five, we've got that covered. So the reason why we're working, yes, with a group, with the Anglican Diocese, yes, they have the holder, they can hold, they're one of the umbrella groups that's on your list. But the reason why, with their knowledge, I'm trying to pioneer beating that ground for the Groups of Five, because that's exactly what's coming, is people who are skilled professionals who want to come together and say, yes, Government of Canada, we want to contribute in a very material way. So the first question has to do with, do your groups provide, for example, the biggest hiccup we see right now is needing vetted refugees. So we don't want to, we can't do that process. That's not, so, interfacing with groups like yours, the question is, do you have a capacity to provide that sort of resource for a group of folks who are saying, yes, we want to, find housing, take folks to school, do that and say yes, and the reason why I flag that is, yes, there's these, basically if you go to Citizenship and Immigration Canada, there's 5 taps that can be turned. And what we're saying is, yes, there's 2 taps that we've identified, but we'd like to turn another one, so just let more in, right? Even though the process is slow. So that's the first. And the second is to the mayor about whether there is a department or group within the city here to talk about what the options are for affordable housing, because yes, rent is a part of that 30,000 budget, but are there places where we can kind of leverage that to basically provide housing in the city? Because under Group of Five, you have to have people in your community, and even though that's not clearly defined on the government site, we're saying Vancouver, basically, so somewhere in Vancouver. So that's the 2 questions I have, is support and then housing, affordable housing.
Okay. Chris?
I can speak to the support. I think in terms of providing the support and working with the group of sponsors, whether it is the sponsorship holders or Group of Five, we are saying, at least at MOSAIC, we will step up to the plate. to support these people through that settlement and integration into the local community. I think, the settlement services are available in every organization, and I'm hoping that the provincial government pledged money could be actually used to portion of it to increase that capacity of service providers. And otherwise, I think we would be willing and able to work with sponsors to be able to provide the groundwork with the resettled refugees. In terms of can you provide the link overseas, I think that's Chris spoke about that. That's not the role we play. That's actually the role of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Even the government of Canada, in terms of selecting refugees to resettle in Canada, they still have to go through the UNHCR offices in the respective countries.
One more point there. There is, though, what's called visa office referred cases. So occasionally overseas, the Canadian immigration officer will identify a case and deem that as a priority. And they will place that case on a secured website for primarily sponsorship agreement holders to consider sponsoring. So the sponsorship agreement holder does not name the case. It is the visa officer who has identified a particular case as a priority for expedited resettlement.
Thanks for that. And on the city side, would be good to have, don't hesitate to reach out to the city. You can do that to the city's housing center or even start with 311 for a way to plug in there so we're aware of what the housing opportunity is. Obviously, we're working very hard on affordable housing for people who live here in Vancouver, but if there's some synergy in figuring out how to find housing for people and make that work within a city program, that's something I know our city staff would be interested in seeing. So thanks for that. Chris is up next. Welcome.
Yeah, my name is Chris, and I'm with Rainbow Refugee.
Just put it right up to your mouth there.
My name is Chris Morrissey, and I'm with Rainbow Refugee Society, and we both support LGBTQ refugees who are in Canada, and we also do sponsorships from overseas. So there's a couple of things I wanted to check with. I mean, Chris, you've just covered the issue of what happens, and there are these lists, and people can approach a sponsorship agreement holder. If you're interested in doing a group of 5, there is a list, and so if you approach a sponsorship agreement holder and you're ready with your group to do the sponsorship, they can provide you with not the names of people, but they can provide you with a list of folks with some identification, like how many in the family, what languages they speak, what their health status is. So there is a way to access that information. One of the things that is really problematic for sponsorship by groups of 5 and by community organizations is the problem that Canada imposes the need for people to have the UNHCR certified, that people are certified. I want to know if there's any way that the city can continue to push, as somebody else said, push that motion further, because that is a huge barrier to people who actually want to get involved in doing sponsorships, because it takes 5, 7, 10 years in some cases to get people through that process. So I'd like to ask the mayor if there's a possibility of you and mayors from across the country considering advocating with the federal government, excuse me while I laugh, to to actually do away with that need, for particularly for areas that are identified. And secondly, there has been mentioned, Chris, you mentioned about that for a family of 4 or 5, it takes $20,000 to $25,000 to support a family of 4 or 5. In our experience with people living in Vancouver, it has taken us a minimum of $20,000 for a couple not with children, but a couple. And so I'm also interested in you sharing with the people here, we're talking about government-assisted refugees. How much money do they get monthly once they get here?
Yes, once they get here. Government-assisted refugees, and as I mentioned, we're looking at about 6,900 individuals for this calendar year. They receive, under the federal government, what is called resettlement assistance, or RAP. They receive income support for a 12-month period. That income support mirrors the provincial welfare rates. So every refugee that is resettled to here in British Columbia would get the same amount as someone, the working poor, or someone who is accessing income support in British Columbia. The rates mirror the provincial welfare rates. So it's meant as a starting point. They also receive a very basic household goods and furniture package to get them started. And the target, the number of government-assisted refugees here in British Columbia has been roughly the same for over a decade now, at 800 individuals per year.
Okay, thank you for that, Chris and Chris. So we are over time now. It's after 8:30. So I'll go one more question, and I'm going to encourage everyone who has questions in the line there, and anyone who is writing questions to talk with city staff. Our city staff can come down the line and get your questions, and we can post the answers on the city website. If you have questions that you want to make public here, we also will have an opportunity. You can stay. We have the room till 9 o'clock here, so if people want to connect here in the room, that's also going to be happening for the next 20 or so minutes. So we'll have one more question, then we'll wrap up with a few comments and thanks.
Good evening. Hello. Hello. One. Yeah.
There you are.
Hello. My name is Zdravko. I'm originally from Montenegro, and 2 years ago I came as a gay refugee. I'm part of Rainbow Refugee, but also I work for AIDS Vancouver. We also have refugees who are HIV positive, and we work with them. My question is about the statement that Prime Minister Harper made a couple of days ago, that Canada would not allow massive coming in Canada from Syrian refugees in thousands, because they all need to go to the screening check. How is possible to make a screening of thousands of people who are desperate? And when we see that in different cases it's a different thing. We mentioned Kosovo and Kosovars in immediate actions. Is this because they're coming from Europe? Or is this because they're coming from countries that our government is definitely trying to impose the stereotypes that everybody is a terrorist? So first of all, I want to acknowledge that we have cases before where military planes, Canadian government made effort to bring thousands and thousands of refugees, and why is not now? What is the fear of Canadian government that the Syrian refugees and families and kids who are dying right now at this moment while we're talking cannot come to Canada? And what City of Vancouver and yourself can do and make a pressure on federal government to do something different. Also, housing and stuff. What will City of Vancouver do if all this citizens come in Vancouver? So what's the idea of housing? And of course, Chris Morrissey asked how much they get per month, and we didn't get the answer, because the answer is for the housing and for the food, it's $610 in Vancouver for a month. So for a single person, it's $610 a month for food and accommodation in Vancouver, in BC. Is that possible? Just use the logic. Thank you.
You've covered a lot of ground there. Just to go back again to Kosovo, during that time, it was political will. That was the impetus for the significant response announced by the former Prime Minister at that time. And with the enactment of that contingency plan, that allowed for significant resources within the Government of Canada that were put in place to do pre-health screenings as well as security clearances before they got on that flight. But we were talking about significant staffing resources on the ground and expedited processing because it had the will of the Prime Minister, who said, we are going to take several thousand Kosovars and we need to do it now, and we need to do it over a 4-month period. And it's the political will that created that opportunity. It had nothing to do with where they were from, which country of origin. It had everything to do with political will.
And, yeah, thanks for your question. You just want to point out your leadership on this as a Pride Parade Grand Marshal as well, and bringing this issue to the forefront. Thanks for your work. It was part of our discussion here in the launch, the Pride Forum that we had was focused on LGBTQ refugees as well, and your leadership on this has been very important, so thank you for that. So we're going to call it on the questions. Sorry for those who've been waiting patiently. Again, please, if you could pass along your questions to city staff, and we can get answers posted on the city's website. I just, again, want to thank, first of all, these two gentlemen, Chris and Eyob, for being up here, sharing their lifetimes of knowledge on this and their work for refugees here in Vancouver and around the world. Big thanks to you two for joining us. We had lots of city staff that worked hard to pull this together in very short order, so a big thanks to all the city staff who've worked to support this happening tonight. Big hand. And I'll just say we do have lots of work ahead of us on this. This is obviously a very important and live issue for us as a city, and it's important that we are reaching out to our neighbors, to our families and friends to make sure that people can convey the information that we're hearing tonight, what we've learned tonight, where you can get that information. The handout has lots of next steps, points of contact that you can access. Which is great. We'll keep working on the city side of things, so the vancouver.ca website will have more information, answers to questions that have come tonight, and ways that people can take next steps. And all the organizations that work on this here in the city, I think will be links there as well. So thanks for that. I'll just say, just in closing, I had the incredible honor to be gathered with a group of mayors earlier this summer in Vatican City. And we were invited by the Pope to talk about a couple of things that are very, very clearly connected to what we've talked about tonight. And those were to talk in the Vatican about modern slavery, about human trafficking, and about climate change, and connecting the dots between these incredible challenges that the world is facing right now and how they're all connected. Because in many of these humanitarian crises, there is increasingly a climate change impact that is creating refugees around the world. And the stories that we heard from mayors, particularly in around the Mediterranean, with people coming across the Mediterranean, the mayor of Lampedusa, a little island south of Italy, part of Italy, but off the coast, that has been overwhelmed with refugees from Africa. And really the human carnage that she and residents of Lampedusa have faced there. Many of those have ended up, whether it's war-torn countries, whether it's climate that has caused droughts that have gone on for years and years and years and wiped out people's ability to live in some parts of the world. These are mounting, so the need has never been higher, and it's only going to increase as climate change wreaks havoc on the most vulnerable regions in the world. There's no question, those of us who are blessed to live in a place with resources and water, with a great capacity in our city, humanitarian capacity in our country, have a responsibility to step up and do more and help those in dire need. So I really just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming tonight, for giving your time and energy and interest, those who've shared your comments and your questions, your passion for this. It makes a real difference, and it will make a big difference for our city going forward and make a difference around the world. These ripples will be felt. So thanks for your input tonight, for being part of this, and we'll carry this work forward together. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.